implemented changes to public finance management, and undertook toxic borrowing to finance government programs. It also introduced reforms affecting public institutions and the administration of government. Instead of easing the financial burden on citizens, the tax burden has increased significantly. Households have experienced reduced disposable income while facing higher prices for food, fuel, electricity, and other basic commodities. On the debt management, why is this regime in open violation of Article 211 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 and Section 15 2C of the Public Finance Management Act 2012 that strictly prohibits the financing of recurrent expenditure using debt? Looking back, we know that the Grand Coalition government borrowed an average of 200 billion shillings annually. The Jubilee government of Uhuru Kenyatta borrowed an average of 700 billion shillings annually. This regime of William Ruto borrows an average of 1.4 trillion annually with no corresponding development. Since August 2022, Kenya's debt growth has entered a dangerous pattern of continuous triple-digit or near triple-digit expansions. As we speak today, every citizen of Kenya and every child born as of this morning has a debt of Kenya shillings 221,000. This country has a debt of 13.02 trillion, up from Kenya shillings 8.6 trillion in August 2022 when William took over. Mr. William Ruto has borrowed in excess of 5 trillion over the last 4 years. This regime, on a borrowing spree, borrows an average of 3.5 billion Kenya shillings daily and steals 3 billion shillings daily. Why borrow to steal? On average, this government steals from the people of Kenya 125 million shillings every hour. Calculated, this government is stealing every minute 2 million shillings from the people of Kenya. Dear Kenyans, the National Treasury has delayed disbursing the equitable share of revenue to counties. These cash flow delays have routinely stalled county operations, delayed staff salaries, and inflated pending bills to over 156 billion, despite legal mandates requiring timely monthly transfers. Misplaced priorities such as funding State House budget by 10 billion, building state lodges and airstrips has caused cash flow constraints. The strengthening, devolution, and improving the timely disbursement of funds was at the core of the Kenya Kwanza Covenant with the people of Kenya. Once again, this promise has been broken. Patriotic Kenyans, ladies and gentlemen, measured against the promise to lower the cost of living, improve access to affordable credit, and strengthen small businesses, the evidence presented suggests that many Kenyans have yet to experience the relief that was promised. Mr. William Ruto made an ambitious commitment to the people of Kenya. The promise was to place young people at the center of Kenya's economic transformation and restore hope to millions of young people seeking meaningful work. The population of Kenya is 75% youthful. The African Union has long urged African countries to harness this demographic dividend by investing in young people. It is therefore fitting that we assess one of the administration's flagship commitments, expanding credit opportunities to Kenyans' youth. The Kenya Kwanza administration promised to establish a 50 billion hustler fund to provide affordable credit to mama mboga, boda operators, mkokoteni operators, and other small-scale entrepreneurs. This commitment was to ease financial constraints, promote enterprise, and improve the livelihoods of ordinary Kenyans. Mr. William Ruto established the Hustler Fund, whose head and tail cannot be traced. As it were, the financing programs intended to support micro, small, and medium enterprises. The Hustler Fund is said to have disbursed 87 billion Kenya shillings to 28 million people. What a paradox. What a lie. I am yet to hear of anyone Kenyan saying that they have expanded their business courtesy of the Hustler Fund. Limiting the disbursement of funds to registered cooperatives would have probably made a greater economic impact and would have reduced the mobile loan default rate that is very high. I have raised fundamental questions on the effectiveness of the Hustler Fund in meeting its stated objectives. The truth of the matter is the high rate of loan defaults and low loan disbursements, in many instances 500 shillings, are insufficient to establish or grow a sustainable business venture anywhere in the country. This is simply a lost cause and was a fraud. 4 years ago, Kenyan women were promised dignity, economic empowerment, and their welfare. 4 years later, the women continue to experience economic hardships occasioned by a high cost of living, increased medical and education costs, and an unsustainable credit framework under the Hustler Fund and Women Enterprise Fund. The discontinuation of projects such as Linda Mama and Edu Afia have increased the cost of accessing healthcare and education services to women and their families. Mr. William Ruto has ignored Justice John Mativo's 2017 ruling and the former Chief Justice Maraga 2020 advisory to entitle a legislative framework and implement the 2/3 Jeta rule despite having a parliamentary majority. Patriotic Kenyans, the Kenya Kwanza commitment was to turn the housing challenge into an economic opportunity. They promised to build 250,000 houses every year. This was the promise. However, 4 years later, Mr. Ruto has fashioned and turned this into a conduit to steal public land and be the sole supplier of construction inputs, cement, steel, tiles, nails, and MDF panels that manufactures factories he has bought and acquired. The Affordable Housing Fund has collected over $1 billion since its inception. The State Department of Housing and Urban Development has conveniently ensured a low absorption rate of roughly 25% due to the staggered nature of construction phases and investments of proceeds in treasury bills, bonds through CDN Bank. CDN Bank is today classified as Tier 2 medium-sized bank. It has graduated from Tier 3 status after achieving a market share of over 1% driven by deposits mobilized from Government of Kenya State Corporations, Social Health Authority, Nairobi City County Government, and the Affordable Housing Fund levies. CDN Bank is worth 95 billion in asset value, Kenya shillings 74 billion in customer deposit, and a reported 1.7 billion net profit in the year ending 2025. Compare this sudden change in fortunes with the 2022 financial year results. This bank had 42 billion Kenya shillings in assets, 30 billion in customer deposit, and a reported loss in the financial year ending 2022. Since William Ruto bought it, you can see the transformation. This housing scheme is nothing but a personal business that guarantees the exclusive single source offtake of steel, MDF panels, nails, iron sheets, tiles, cement by factories owned by William Ruto and his allies. The levy proceeds are the reason why CDN Bank deposits have increased tenfold for the 4 years. If it were a genuine program, why is it being forced down citizens' throat? There was no promise to raise the payslip of the Kenyan worker in the name of a punitive housing levy. Private businesses must be left to do their work as the government does its work. It's important that the workers of Kenya know that monies deducted from their payslip is invested in CDN Bank owned by William Ruto, who is collecting the profit. In my view, and as expressed before, the affordable housing scheme should be made optional to Kenyans to allow them to participate at their own free will. Fellow Kenyans, Mr. William Ruto had promised that within 30 days of his presidency, he would establish a quasi-judicial public inquiry to establish the extent of cronyism and state capture in the nation and make recommendations. Unfortunately, over the last 4 years, Mr. William Ruto himself has captured the state. He has focused on centralizing control of independent constitutional commissions, state entities, public sector procurement, and unwarranted sale of strategic national assets, All these measures are aimed at achieving the sole objective of enriching William Ruto at the expense of 55 million Kenyans. It should be noted that William Ruto has achieved the milestone of being certified as a US dollars billionaire in a record 4-year courtesy of looting Kenyan public coffers. Mr. William Ruto's 4 years in office has accomplished a mission of driving Kenyan entrepreneurs out of business. Contractors are out of business. Traders are out of business. William Ruto has captured all businesses and he is in competition with the Kenyans that he leads. He has used his office to flex muscles on traders. Where he has not pushed, his cordial CRBC has come in. Mr. William Ruto has investments in virtually every sector of Kenya's economy, namely banking and finance through CDN Bank, investment banking through Rock Investment Bank, a CMA license issued in 2026, and is the fund manager of NSSF and PSSF pension funds, insurance through Amaco, capital markets through ZD Platform, hospitality through Weston Hotel and Leeds Caraton in the Mara, cement through the various companies that he bought, including Baburi and East African Portland Cement, betting through SportsPesa, Sportbet and Betika, aviation through Kwale Island Development, healthcare through Nairobi West Hospital, telecommunication through East African Device Assembly Limited, oil and energy through Gulf Energy and oil marketing companies, energy gas through Taifa Gas, construction, farming, currency security, he has recently bought Daru, transport, he has even gone into the matatu business. He now has over 100 matatus in Nairobi, agriculture, poultry, minerals, gold prospecting in Aboseli, Logorian, Transmara, DRC, including in Darfur. Literally, all business people in Kenya have been driven out of business by William Ruto. The Parliament of Kenya has failed in its legislative oversight and representative role. Its members, except the few who hang around with me, are on record boasting how they are paid for everything that they pass in Parliament. I must remind all parliamentarians that they are accomplices to criminal acts. Under the archaic leadership of the UDA with winger Moses Wetangula, the National Assembly is one of the major causes of the suffering of Kenyans by passing bad laws like the Finance Bill 2024, whose provisions were later sneaked through amendments and omnibus legislation. Mr. William Ruto's attempt over the last 4 years to undermine the office of the Auditor General has been frantic and uncalled for. He now wants the Auditor General arrested for resisting theft of public funds. The people of Kenya will not allow it. Mr. William Ruto has made IPOA non-functional in the last 4 years. An attempt was made through a Gazette notice to put it under the Ministry of Interior so that they can cover all the crimes against Kenyans and the police. Fortunately, our court stopped this covert mission. Historically, IBC has been an institution under low public trust. It is in the public domain that IBC, as currently constituted, enjoys low public trust among Kenyans. The threat by the chairman Ethocon to suspend or allow by elections if there is violence is a clear indication that he is under manipulation by William Ruto. The Central Bank of Kenya is one of the most critical government institutions we have. However, through the National Assembly, the CBK Act was amended recently to allow the purchase of gold and other precious metals. This is gold bag season 2 loading. Kenyans should be alarmed that CBK has not received currency supplies from Germany for 4 months after it became apparent that the government wanted money diverted to Mombasa and the German suppliers were reluctant. We have also noted the recent changes in the ownership of Dilaru, Kenya, and Kenyans are keenly watching the space to establish whether they want to print currency for bribing voters in a forthcoming general election. Allow me to give 2 practical examples of how William Ruto has captured institutions. I'll use IPOA and KWS as examples. At IPOA, we have over 1,000 cases of police excesses that have been reported over the last 4 years by the people of Kenya. Only about 10 cases have found their way to court. Mr. William Ruto has deliberately slowed down the activities of IPOA. Some few days ago, the Amboseli National Ecosystem the Amboseli National Park ecosystem, 15 elephants died and some lions died later. We were cheated that they were died through suspected cyanide poisoning from pesticides. Tell the Kenyans the truth, Mr. William Ruto. Doing cyanide lynching to extract good prospects. And this warning goes to the people of Ikolomani in Kakamega, where Mr. William Ruto is eyeing your gold deposits. Be very careful. Again, the CS for Health issued Gazette notice number 11492 on 30th July 2026 on the mandatory inbound travel health insurance for tourists traveling to Kenya to have travel insurance in Kenya. We know the reason. This is because goons are after tourists in the country, and now they want to force an insurance policy down their throats. To demonstrate what professionals in this government feel and go through, allow me to quote Professor Njogona Ndungu, the former National Treasury Cabinet Secretary, during a development forum in Sweden, and I quote, "The capacity to do the right things exists, but is overshadowed by institutional failure, where someone seeks to overrun institutions. The current president is overrunning all institutions, leading to conformity driven by fear within these institutions," close quote. What is this if not impunity of the highest order? Patriotic Kenyans, historically, land is one of the most emotive issues in Kenya. Mr. William Ruto has promised to settle all historical land injustices in Kenya and resettle millions of squatters across the country. Unfortunately, he has scored the lowest in this matter and created many war fronts on the land question. Over the last 4 years, William Ruto and his cronies have been involved in an historic high-level grabbing of land and misuse of public lands. For instance, 2,800 acres have been grabbed by Ruto and his cronies in Kebiko, Kajiado. 6,000 acres of land in Owasso Kedong in Suswa has been grabbed. 5,000 acres of land, or Kyobo in the Masai Mara, has been grabbed. 1,000 acres of land for Puko and Limanet within Narok Township has been grabbed. Over 7,000 acres of land of Olokuto adjudication section in Narok North. Kehoto land, about 300 landowners risk being thrown out of their 700 acres of land. Davivi land in Naivasha has been grabbed by William Ruto. He has put up a home and he is growing wheat and maize in the farm. Banita settlement scheme, 14,000 acres of land have been grabbed. Olongai land, about 167,000 people are at the risk of eviction as this land is being grabbed. Egerton University land, Oscar Sudi, Samburu, and William Ruto have grabbed 2,000 acres of land meant for the university where they are doing wheat farming. Patriotic Kenyans, health has long been one of Kenya's foremost national priorities. Building on the gains made at our Kenya Vision 2030, the Kenya Kwanza administration committed itself to delivering universal health coverage by guaranteeing every Kenyan access to affordable quality health care. The plan pledged to realize the constitutional right to health through a reformed national health insurance scheme founded on the principle of leaving no one behind. To implement this commitment, the government replaced the National Health Insurance Fund, NHIF, with a failed and fraudulent scheme called SHA that has left millions of Kenyans on their own. The discontinuation of Linda Mama and Edu Afia on December 31st, 2023, has left significant gaps in healthcare coverage. In 2022, Edu Afia provided medical cover to 3.4 million secondary school students at an annual cost of 3.2 billion. Today, approximately 4.1 million secondary school students no longer enjoy that medical cover, leaving parents to bear the full cost of treatment. Mr. William Ruto had committed to addressing the inequities in Kenya's education system so as to level the playing field for all children irrespective of their background. He further committed to equitable universal basic education defined as 12 years of schooling. He further committed himself to protecting and strengthening the gains made under free primary education and free day secondary education, while ensuring that every Kenyan child had access to quality, affordable, and equitable education. He also pledged to strengthen higher education financing and invest in the nation's human capital. The William Ruto government inherited landmark education reforms introduced by previous administrations. Free primary education launched in 2003, free day secondary education introduced in 2018, that had significantly expanded access to education for millions of Kenyan children. The commitment was not only to preserve these gains, but to build upon them by ensuring adequate capitation, sustainable financing, and improved access to quality education for all. In the words of the third president of the Republic of Kenya, the best president we have ever had, Mzee Mwai Kibaki, and he said, and I quote, "Education is the ultimate means of ensuring an equitable society. Equitable education ensures that every child has a chance to fulfill their potential and rise to the highest level of accomplishment," close quote. 4 years later, the government has caused irreparable instability and confusion in the educational sector. The gains made by the previous administration under free primary education and free day secondary education have been eroded to dust. Secondary school parents now showed a substantially higher education cost, while the level of government capitation has failed to keep pace with inflation and rising operation costs. The capitation rate established in 2017 was 22,000 per student. However, today's schools receive only 9,000 per student during the previous financial year, creating a significant funding gap. Our public universities are facing unprecedented financial distress. University debt has increased from 60 billion in August 2022 to approximately 100.3 billion Kenya shillings, representing an increase of Kenya shillings 40.3 billion, or about 67% increase. As a result, many institutions are experiencing severe financial challenges that will affect the delivery of quality education. Further, we have had 2 university financing models in 2 years. Measured against the commitment to strengthen education, protect free basic education, and improve access to higher education, the evidence presented suggests that the sector has experienced significant setbacks, placing greater financial pressure on families and creating uncertainty for learners and institutions alike. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. William Ruto pledged to invest 250 billion Kenya shillings into the agricultural sector to shift the country from food security to surplus production. Recognizing its strategic importance, he pledged to transform the agricultural sector by increasing productivity, improving farmer incomes, and revitalizing key value chains. The administration committed itself to revamping underperforming export crops, expanding emerging high-value crops, strengthening the tea value chain, supporting food security, and promoting agro-processing as a driver of economic growth. Despite the commitments made, our farmers have experienced increased economic hardship. Net incomes have reduced due to increased cost of inputs, higher taxation rates, high transport and distribution costs due to reclassification of VAT status. Agriculture continues to receive approximately 2% of the national budget, significantly below the African Union 10% target under the Maputo Declaration. The tea sector has faced considerable challenges over the past 4 years. This is due to the deterioration of Kenya's economic and diplomatic relations with Sudan. Historically, one of the largest buyers at the Mombasa tea auction. Sudan's annual consumption of Kenyan tea declined from approximately 10.7 million kilograms to about 1.7 million kilograms, leaving substantial volumes of tea unsold. But why has this happened? Mr. William Ruto's appetite for business and money has failed Kenya. His close association with the Sudan's RSF warlord, Mr. Hemeti, in illegal trade of gold in exchange for weapons, has reversed the gains we have made. These internationally sanctioned war criminals live in Kenya under state protection and have been issued with diplomatic passports and ID cards by Kipchumba Murkomen. U.S. Senator Jim Risch, chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, while noting Kenya's NATO ally status, criticized William Ruto during a May 2025 hearing. Senator Risch questioned Kenya's loyalty following its facilitation and hosting of Sudan's paramilitary rapid support forces, RSF. Rice farmers in Ahero, West Kano, Bunyala, Bura, and Moya have also faced significant challenges. Although rice was identified as a strategic import substitution crop, import volumes approaching 1 million metric tons annually have depressed local paddy prices, leaving many farmers with unsold stock. Just recently, on 6 July 2026, William Ruto authorized the gazettement of duty-free importation of 490,000 metric tons of grade 1 milled white rice before 30th November, June 26. It estimates that this represents a missed economic opportunity exceeding 100 billion Kenya shillings if domestic production had been given priority before this duty-free window was open. Even though state sugar mills have been leased to private sector players associated with William Ruto, their principal business model is to import sugar instead of purchasing locally grown sugar from farmers. This has left 320,000 small-scale sugarcane farmers now facing an uncertain future. The targeted turning of 2 million poor farmers from food deficit to surplus producers using input finance and agricultural extension support. To date, show me one farmer in Kenya who can come forward as a testimonial. Instead, this farmer has nothing. In fact, small-scale farmers in Moya and Ahero are currently in court trying to salvage their crop after government gazetted the importation of 490,000 metric tons of rice for importation. Tea farmers are crying. A 0.8% levy has been introduced, and this year's bonus will reduce from 45 Kenya shillings per kilo. Sugarcane farmers in Western Nyanza and Kisii, the government is unable to pay 270 million owed to them. Cane per ton has reduced from 6,500 to 5,000. Dairy farmers who have supplied milk to new KCC have not been paid for 6 months. It is further alarming that the National Agricultural Value Chain Development Program allocation dropped by 54% to 54% from 10.2 billion Kenya shillings in 2025-2026 financial year to 4.7 billion Kenya shillings in 2026-2027 financial year. This is a direct assault on the agricultural value chain in Kenya. As Deputy President, I initiated progressive reforms in the agricultural sector that increased returns for tea, coffee, dairy, and other cash crops. Through my efforts, we negotiated an 8 billion debt waiver for coffee farmers that was suspended as soon as I left office. More can and more will be done once we form government on August 10 next year. Patriotic Kenyans, William Ruto pledged affordable credit and working capital through an accommodative financial ecosystem, removing structural exploitation and removing barriers to unsecured agricultural credit. To date, the Agricultural Finance Corporation is underfunded. It has a demand of 15 billion Kenya shillings per year from farmers, but the promise to fund it by 10 billion Kenya shillings per year was a hoax. Instead, those who borrowed are being auctioned. Dear Kenyans, William Ruto pledged to revive collapsed cooperative factories and processing plants such as sugar and dairy sectors and guaranteed minimum returns for farm products. Show me any revived sugar factory. Instead, they have been sold, and they have been bought by Ruto and cronies. Where is the cashew nut factory you promised in the coast? Where is the value addition centers you promised in 47 counties? Where are the county industrial and aggregation parks you promised? Where is the state-of-the-art slaughterhouse you promised at Bachuma for animals in northern Kenya? Where is the nitrogen fertilizer factory you launched in Naivasha? Where is the marble factory you launched in Vihiga? On value chain investments, he designated a specific capital infusion, including 250 billion for tea value chain and expanded investments in dairy farming and coffee cherry funds. Where are these funds? Nowhere. On blue economy and fisheries, funding for fisheries and the blue economy decreased by 30% from Kenya shillings 11.15 billion to Kenya shillings 7.83 billion. Livestock sector allocations of livestock fell by 14% from Kenya shillings 13.6 billion to 11.6 billion. On eradication of hunger and improved food security, the country was promised prosperity by Ruto. Unfortunately, the number of undernourished people in Kenya increased from 10.1 million in 2004-2006 to 19.7 million in 2023-2025. It is more troubling when you look at the costs of a typical household food basket. A food basket is estimated to have risen from Kenya shillings 15,000 in 2022 to over 19,000 shillings today, an increase of more than 26%. Essential commodities such as electricity, chicken, beef, sugar, kerosene, bread, and milk have all become significantly more expensive here in Kenya over the last 4 years. Patriotic Kenyans, 4 years ago, this government promised the people of Kenya dams and water. 50 mega dams across the country were promised. 200 medium-sized dams across the country were promised. 1,000 small dams were to be constructed across the country. These dams included High Grad Force Dam along the Tana and Mutonga rivers to serve Kitui, Tharaka Nithi, and Embu counties. Soin Koru Dam in Kisumu, Rumuruti Dam in Laikipia, Mohoya Dam in Nyeri, Kirinyaga, Revival of Arol and Kimorel Dams, Thakwe Dam, Sioi Muruni Dam in West Pokot, Badasa Dam in Marsabit, Darugo in Kiambu, Rale in Kilifi, Galana in Tana River, Kokwanyo Dam in Homa Bay, Lowat in Turkana, Makamini in Kwale, among others. Unfortunately, all we see, no dam. All we see is our president visiting other countries like Ethiopia to witness the launching of their dams. Where are these dams, Mr. William Ruto, in 4 years? On matters of environment, this administration had committed to grow 15 billion trees by the year 2032. What we are witnessing is the lifting of the logging ban and the systematic logging in national forests under the cover of the Kenya Forest Service. Numerous court cases have been filed by international conservation groups Greenbelt and the Law Society of Kenya against the government's attempt to build infrastructure in protected natural habitats. Talanta Stadium and Bomas Conference Center Link Road that will see over 100 acres of forest destroyed. Upper Imenti Forest in Meru is being cleared for the construction of a state lodge, a golf course, and an airstrip, which will exercise and clear 200 acres of forest. Where was this promise? Even the trees at the gate of State House have been cut. Is this still part of the growing 15 billion trees? Patriotic Kenyans, in foreign affairs, we had the worst since independence. Kenya's nose is poked everywhere, including the war in Ukraine and Russia, where our young men are lied to that there are jobs, well-paying for that matter, but they find themselves in the war front. Reports indicate that we have lost 19 Kenyans, including Clinton Nyapara, Dennis Bagaka, Erastus Mundia, Simeon Wahome, Eric Mwangi, Ronald Kibet, Shadrach Wafula, Othiabo Martin, Ibrahim Yahaya, among others. Several other Kenyans in their hundreds remain unaccounted for, and hundreds of others are still active in the war zone. Their parents are keen at home, still crying to see their loved ones back home. A person who was in Kenya in 2022 would wonder whether the Kenya Kwanza commitment to a creative and robust foreign policy whose pillars will be economic and commercial diplomacy changed into converting our young Kenyans into war fugitives in far countries. As if that is not enough, the footprints of Kenya adversary in DRC Congo war zone and M23, Sudan's